Let's talk to Sir John Curtice, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. John, what does the return of David Cameron as Foreign Secretary say about where Britain's foreign policy is heading?
Well, I think the honest truth, it probably doesn't tell us a great deal. It's worth bearing in mind that foreign policy in the UK is not only a subject that is usually a matter of relative consensus within the governing party, but is also a matter of relative consensus between the governing party and the opposition. And that's certainly true so far as the Russian invasion of Ukraine is concerned. And so far, at least, that's also been true, despite some of the pressure on Sir Keir Starmer to change his line. It's been true of the attitude of both government and opposition to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And I don't think we can necessarily expect that Lord Cameron's moval into the office is necessarily going to signal a change. That said, of course, there is no doubt that the UK, along with the USA, is perhaps finding the humanitarian consequences of the Israeli invasion of Gaza as getting to be increasingly uncomfortable. We've certainly seen the United States try to persuade Israel to allow more in the way of humanitarian passages and temporary pauses of the conflict. And we wait to see whether or not the UK government also begins to be somewhat more critical. But I think if that happens, that won't be because Lord Cameron has suddenly become Foreign Secretary.
Will a substantial reshuffle transform the fortunes of the UK's Conservative Party, given how far behind they are in the opinion polls?
Look, no obvious reason directly why it should do so. Of course, Lord Cameron is relatively well known, not especially popular. Indeed, the early polling suggests that even amongst Conservative voters, they're even divided about whether they're for or against his return to high office. But in truth, so far as that this reshuffle might make any difference, it's whether or not Victoria Atkins, the new Health Secretary, a new Cabinet Minister, being promoted from the more junior ranks into the very difficult job of Health Secretary, whether or not she can reach an accommodation with the doctors who have been engaged in industrial action for a considerable period of time, and whether in the wake of that, the waiting can be going down because of the issues. The NHS is certainly a considerable problem for the party, with the state of the economy, which is still in the hands of Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor.
Since 2016, Britain has had 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Foreign Secretaries, 7 Housing Ministers, I think 9 Education Ministers, and 15 Housing Ministers. Forgive me if I've missed anyone out. Does it matter?
Well, certainly many people would argue that if you have constant turnover, then ministers have no chance to learn the job. So again, go back to Victoria Atkins. You know, Stephen Barclay, her predecessor, had certainly got very heavily involved in the detail of health policy, while all of a sudden now we've got a new broom coming along who's not previously worked in the health department, who's going to have to get up to speed very quickly when we are approaching the depths of winter, which of course is the time when the health service is always under greatest pressure. And it certainly can be argued that this turnover is not to anybody's advantage. It is, of course, however, a reflection of the fact that certainly since the Brexit referendum that David Cameron lost, the Conservative Party has been in pretty much continuous turmoil, and the turnover of 4 Prime Ministers since the EU referendum is then also reflected in the turnover of those also occupying Cabinet office.
John, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Sir John Curtice, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde.